Every person who has ever been uncomfortable looking at me feels so comfortable with my body is a message of their discomfort with their own bodies. I always used to hide my fatness or things that I am personally ashamed of by the fact that I was an overachiever. Hello, I'm Simran Nanda. I'm 22. My pronouns are she, her, and I identify as a little speck of dust in this very big universe. I think, first of all, like you said, there's no separating both of these journeys because it has been a personal journey of recognizing privilege, getting out of my echo chamber, and then indulging in a process of unlearning and healing. So there's a lot happening at the personal front. And I would like to believe that this sector is slowly blooming. We are kind of putting seeds in right now, and we hope that we see the results years from now. And I also understand that the sector is slowly growing, slowly becoming more and more comfortable with the idea of talking about human rights for queer individuals, talking about violence, talking about discrimination, and talking about sexuality. I would also like to believe that the sector has also progressed as I've grown up. I remember I started when I was 14, when I think in the year 2014, when Section 377 got recriminalized. I remember starting then, knowing the little that I did, and growing up, I also believe that I have been able to build a space around me, or at least find people who are building a space around me, talking about emotional adequacy, talking about the importance of soft skills, talking about the importance of inclusion. So yes, I feel like as I grew, awareness in the sector grew too, but I wouldn't say it's fast-paced at all. It's slow. But like I tell the people that I work with, whenever we feel demotivated, we are the building blocks of what our future, which is inclusive of all identities, of all communities, of all castes, looks like. So yeah, I feel like walking on this path with a certain amount of optimism really does help. Yes, like I said, there's been so much healing personally. I feel like I became more and more spiritual with age, and knowing that there is a space outside the conventions society has defined for us really always did help. When I was 14, I think the first time I was introduced to the word sexuality, my first thought as a 14-year-old, and I'd like to give myself a lot of credit for it because I never thought I was this smart. The first thought I ever had was, maybe I am not as heterosexual as I've always thought I am, because of understanding how sexuality can be very fluid. And I think that is an example of the fact that I was internalizing information I was given. It wasn't just a campaign for me, it wasn't just advocacy, because who am I to advocate, right? As someone who is going to formally take education to become a social worker, I know that I'm a bridge today, right? So being able to correct my vocabulary, being able to understand my privilege. I also grew up in South Delhi. I went to a very privileged school. It was English medium. And so I was in an echo chamber. So there was a big difference working around queer rights in an echo chamber, without disregarding my work, but also getting in terms with reality when I joined college. In this process, I also did face a lot of fat shaming. I was diagnosed with PCOS when I was in 9th grade. However, because I was a public speaker, I was someone who was always confident, I grew up as a hyper-independent kid. None of it ever took a toll on me. But I always used to hide my fatness or things that I am personally ashamed of by the fact that I was an overachiever in school. And then I attached the idea of shame with my sexuality and my body a little too closely. It was also with the kind of media exposure I was growing with. I know that this is such a big hormonal transition for the women around me as well, right? So I think every person in their late teens will just going to always wonder, why am I not this? Why am I not as perfect as what I see on TV? And we do internalize that message too. So I attached a lot of shame and disgust to my fatness. However, this journey has been so spread out. You can see that I'm trying to join bits and pieces because there's so much that has happened. I also I became hypersexual as a trauma response. But then back then I did not know it's a trauma response, and my mental health went haywire because I feel like it's always good to have someone who can guide you, someone who can help you through this journey. I grew up as a hyper-independent kid with a single mother, and so the only person who would look out for me is me. And I think my hypersexuality helped me get in terms with my own sexuality and like my body. Now, like I said, this is a very complicated relationship because I was hypersexual as a trauma response, right? Which is also, which was a little harmful for me. But at the same time, I was undergoing this beautiful journey of being okay with my body. And as that was happening, it was as a 22-year-old, now that I look back and I see how my relationship with my body affected the people around me was something very interesting. I realized now I know I have the vocabulary for it, that every person who has ever been uncomfortable looking at me feels so comfortable with my body is a message of their discomfort with their own bodies. And this idea is so strong because it detaches you of so much social, so much pressure that we put on social ideas of what is good, bad. And at the end of the day, it's just a reflection of how you look at yourself. And this idea was so strong, and I feel like it's built in so much love for me that now I see someone who even passively or covertly is not comfortable with me being me, I just embrace them with empathy and love. And I feel like that's a very strong message. And my personal journey of working around queer rights, I really wouldn't want to put a label on who I am in that space, because I would like to recognize that I grew up with a lot of privilege. And I am, like I said, no one to advocate. I am no one to fight for. And honestly, I feel like I'm also no one to fight with. I am someone who can use what I have to help and be that bridge. And I feel like that is also what I'm taking to my education in this field. How to be that perfect bridge. This beautiful idea that I was talking about, I had an interview with a university a while back, and they asked me to define social justice for them. I was like, social justice is only possible for us to understand as society when minorities and vulnerable communities know what their rights are, so that we can reach a space of equity, right? At the moment, we don't even, that knowledge is not extended to a lot of communities, especially vulnerable communities, which makes it easier for majorities to exploit them. And that is the job that I feel like I want to take up for the rest of my life in many different capacities. And yeah, I think that is where I stand right now. I'm filling my own heart with love and empathy, because I don't know who I would be without that. I don't think I would ever be able to be a social worker without that. At the same time, I'm learning to love myself. I know it's a very overused cliche term, but I really do feel like I've come a little close. I think that's a beautiful revelation. And at the same time, somehow swimming through. So yeah. Like you said, the first step was to detach shame and attach dignity to who I am. The idea of attaching dignity to who I am comes from a space of respecting myself. I think as a 22-year-old, I remember the other day, I was just cussing my body. I was feeling bloated. I wasn't feeling too good. So I cussing my body. So what I do when something like this happens is I take out my journal. I remember writing a note to myself like, Simran, if you can't respect and love yourself, that's okay, but don't respect the journey that has brought you here, alive, okay and healthy, right? That's the least that you can do. And I stare at that whenever I even get close to disrespecting my body. So this inner, and I told my friend this, and they're like, I love it how you have like an inner parent and an inner child talking to each other. I was like, thank you for saying that. Thank you so much, because I know it's a big victory. So getting rid of shame and attaching dignity to who I am is also my way of reparenting myself, right? Like you said, of course, life would have been different. I was doing a live session with an organization, and they asked me, if you had gotten sexuality education as a kid, how would your life be different? All I could tell them was, if I had gotten sexuality education as a kid, I would literally be like President of India or something. I'd be in a magazine, Forbes 30 under 30. I'd be the most successful person in the world, because I understand the idea of the fact that knowledge is power, right? Of course, I acquired it later, but it's still, like you said, I can use it, and I can use it in a way where I am becoming the bridge. That's a different thing. When coming back to detaching shame, attaching dignity, and also reclaiming pleasure, right? Now, as a trauma survivor, as an abuse survivor, it has been a very difficult journey. I also, in the process, developed a lot of social anxiety. I also developed the idea of being repelled by the idea of being touched. I just became scared. I think surviving abuse also not just leaves you with mental trust issues, but also you're afraid of a certain kind of touch, right? And in the process, how do you reclaim pleasure? That has also been a journey, and it's a journey I'm still on. One very big achievement that I claimed for myself was last Sunday I went salsa dancing. I went social salsa dancing, and I danced, and I've loved to dance, but like to be in a space with cisgender heterosexual men and a big population of very, very rowdy ones is very, very scary for me as an abuse survivor. And I took my time. I took one step at a time, and now finally I was able to go dancing. It's a very, very big victory for me. I am reclaiming my space in public spaces and reclaiming pleasure in my head, right? That was one step closer to not repelling touch, platonic or non-platonic. I wouldn't say I'm able to completely overcome the fear, but I'd say I'm reclaiming it step by step. Reclaiming and attaching dignity to it also helps me build a safe wall for myself. This very powerful idea of with healing, I also want to become a godly woman who you can't have access to, who you can't touch if you're not worthy of my energy. And it also made me so spiritual in the process, right? Like the kind of love that I imbibe as a person. I am an empath. I have so much love to give. It helps me professionally too. But personally, I have so much love to give. But also as a survivor, I'm building this wall of safety around me. I think as a 22-year-old, this is the first time in my life I can say that I'm safe. and I have to give all the credit to myself because I've built this wall of safety. It's taken a lot of therapy, it's taken a lot of meds, it's taken a lot of constant work since the last 4 years. But now I can say that I'm reclaiming it by doing a lot of journaling, talking to myself, talking about my traumas, grieving, crying, staying in my room for days if that's what it takes, making little schedules, taking out time for work and for myself. It's this working in this space, working around gender-based violence as a survivor of abuse myself, which is also a lot of people in this space, is very taxing. And that's why I realized that I have to not always be in spaces which can trigger me. I have to take a step back. If I'm not going to be okay, I'm not going to be able to work towards something else. So self-care is how I reclaim pleasure, how I detach shame to it, and how I attach dignity to the fact that if not me, I better respect the journey that brought me here. So I think this has been what has helped me transition into feeling safe with my own body and starting to feel safe with the environment around me. Yeah. I'm one to meditate. I love meditating, doing very intense breath work, just trying to make sure that I'm in touch, because I feel like the whole of where anxiety comes from is my gut. I feel it in my gut. It becomes very physical very soon. So I feel like meditating helps a lot, but with intense breath work. That's something that I do, and sometimes it results in a lot of grieving and a lot of howling and crying, but I see it as a release, right? I am throwing a lot of filth and dirt out of my body. That really does help. And yes, I am someone who loves to dance. So honestly, there have been days that I've just danced naked in my room. That helps me so much. One thing that has really helped me get comfortable with my own body is liking my curves, liking these bulges, and just being comfortable with it, right? Because I have also with age imbibed this picture in my head that certain clothes are just for women with certain body structures, which is just, that's not what it is. Trying to find beauty in my own self. I've learnt makeup for the first time, and I'm trying to be a fashionable person, and it's not for anyone except me. This part of my life is for me, and I'm so glad I found it. I do have a few more rituals. I actually love journaling because it now that I look back, I've been journaling since 3 years. So I look back at the 2019 version of Simran, and I can say that I'm a different person now for all good reasons, right? It's like recording your growth. So one very cool thing I started, and I generally don't plan to put it out anywhere because it's not open to criticism, is the other day I was feeling very emotionally lonely, right? And as a cis woman in Delhi, dating cis-het men is quite an experience. It has so many shades to it, and I was feeling so lonely and I didn't know what to do about it. So I just opened my sketchbook and I made a little comic. I made a little dialogue scenario of what I was feeling through a little comic. Then I sent it to all my girlfriends, and they were like, we did not need this reality check at 4 p.m. This is too apt, Simran. I love it. I'm going to send it to 10 more girlfriends of mine. So passively, that has reached 10-15 people, 10-15 women, and they were so happy to read it. And I was so happy to see it. So I don't know how it is like, but I'm just channelizing it in my art. So that was something that I've been enjoying so much. Now I'm just making little comics in my sketchbook, and I think just trying to make my journaling a little fancy, adding some color to it and whatnot. And that's for me and just me. And this idea of having my own sacred space, and like you said, also we can't really stop exposing ourselves to stimuli, right? And as survivors, we are scared too. So little bits and pieces of reclaiming spaces, and also understanding that my safe space is just mine, not for everyone or anyone to enter until unless I believe you deserve access to my space. And there you respect my space because I know I'm going to respect yours. So yeah, that's what it's been like.
And that you respect your
I remember when I was in 7th grade, my friend's dad asked me, बेटा क्या करना चाहते हो बड़े होकर? मैंने मैं IAS ऑफिसर बनूंगी. मैं इंडिया को ट्रांसफॉर्म करना चाहती हूँ, सबको बदल दूंगी मैं. And he looked at me, he said, first, no, Simran, change yourself. When you change yourself, you'll change the whole world. But the bit, his advice and my urge to want to change society, even as a 7th grader who did not know jack shit, I think spoke a lot about me. I grew up as a giver. I grew up as a people pleaser. I grew up as a codependent person. And it has taken a lot to channelize safety, positivity into these little aspects which are usually very self-sabotaging. So now that I know the power of my love, now that I know the power of my empathy, and I also am professionally channelizing it in my work, the first thing that I really want to be, and I don't know how this sounds, is come as near as I can to happiness. To happiness as something that resides within me instead of something that I get from the outside. And this work really does up my serotonin levels. This is pure serotonin for me. This evening is pure serotonin for me, really. I want to come as close as I can to happiness. However, I also acknowledge that the space, you can't really not take your heart with you. The space is very taxing, it's very emotionally triggering. It really does eat you up as a person too, because you are constantly exposed to realities. We as a species are constantly running away from realities, right? And here we are constantly exposing ourselves to reality. It can make you really, really sad. It can make you really, really depressed. However, I want to know when to stop. I want, before that, the little courage that I have in me, I want to spend all those years building these bridges that we talked about for as long as I can. Then, I just see myself working the coming few years. I'm someone who loves working. I've never said no to it. I know that there is so much to do as well, here or in any part of the world. And I would like to have all the resources it takes to understand and make communities more accessible to their rights and their privileges, from whatever level of administration I work on, till the time I can. And when I lie on my deathbed, hopefully, and I really hope that I reach there, I want to embrace death very, very peacefully. Like, I did my time here. And you know how we constantly, we live in a world of a lot of complexities. I just want to make it as simple as possible, because that is what will take me to the little happiness that exists. And yes, it's a long process, because 20 साल तो लग जाएंगे, और ये जो 20 साल में ट्रॉमा एक्यूमुलेट किया है उसको हील करने में बहुत टाइम लग जाएगा. But hopefully wherever little bits and pieces of happiness I can find here and there, that's what I live for.
Like what you saw? Support us so we can create more empowering content for you. Like and share this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel.